looked at them in more detail.
To mention, in relative.
100,000. I can see 100,000. I can 100.
Okay, welcome to American Dream Garage. We're going to do another video in my Versus series. And this one is the Mercedes 280 SL, the Pagoda W113 versus its younger brother, the 350 SL, the W107. Both cars are iconic. As far as Mercedes-Benz followers go. The 107 was the second longest running Mercedes series, second to the G-Wagon. This car ran from 1972 to 1989. This car, the 280 SL, ran from 63 to 71. We will do take a look at the engine and the injection systems, which are different. We'll take a look at the interiors and the transmissions, which are different. We'll take a look at the suspension, at least the rear suspension, which is significantly different between the two cars. And we'll do a kind of a in-town highway drive with mild acceleration, so you can to see the differences in the two cars. Go for a little test drive, including some highway miles in the 69 280 SL. Again, this one is equipped with 4-speed automatic. The other one I have is a 4-speed manual. So we'll take it on the highway. I do not push these cars to the limit on shifting them, so we're not going to try to burn any rubber. For a little test drive. Nothing too drastic. This is not a dragster. It's a luxury tourer. I can tell just immediately that the car's a V8. I mean, it's hard to describe the sound and the feel of a car. Maybe you can hear it, but the pull and acceleration, even though the car isn't really significantly faster, from a 0 to 60 perspective, it just feels torquier. An interior perspective, the 350 SL is obviously more modern, has more creature comforts, although still not that many. It has power windows. The car came equipped with standard air conditioning. For the most part, I believe most all of the US models had an automatic transmission. The transmission, because of the increased horsepower, the 280 SL has a 4-speed automatic. They went to a 3-speed automatic because of the little bit of a concern about the excess torque that the engine had. It has the similar, for those of you that have been in early Mercedes, the air conditioning system, they leave a little bit to be desired as far as the 2 controls, has no ability really to adjust it. It's pretty much like an Rubik's Cube. I think I can never quite figure out which of these, because none of it's labeled, but they control between defrost, feet, and the dash, as well as hot and cold, and then fan and air conditioning. This basic dash layout continued through the car until 1989. So if you look at a later model 560 SL, there are differences in the air conditioning. Obviously, they went to a climate control system. They, changed radios, but the basic configuration of this did not change that whole time that the car was out. So that was part of the engineering of this car, was making it last for such a extended production run. So the interior of the W113 or the 280 SL is a little bit more classic. Classic Mercedes-Benz body-colored dash panels, the 2 big gauges mounted centrally off of all of your informational gauges. It has a heating and defrosting system, which is very similar to what I said in the other one, somewhat of a Rubik's Cube of, although this one is marked with some instructions, but it has the basic fan, and then you have to kind of play around and figure out, or read the manual, how these controls work. This car is equipped with air conditioning. You can see that that the air conditioning was, it looks like in the US would have been an add-on, but this Fridge King model was the factory air conditioning system for the car. Most of the US models would have that air conditioning. The transmission in this car is a 4-speed automatic. And the only way I describe it is it's backwards. So if you basically look, the lever is back when you start in park. You go through reverse, neutral, and then you hit 4. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. Anybody that gets into the car, you have to instruct them pretty clearly on how to drive this car. Other than that, it's, you know, nicely appointed for the 60s, but not over the top, and it doesn't have the beginning of the safety features that the 350 SL has. Okay, let's take a look at the drivetrain for the 280 SL. This car has not benefited, yes, from a American Dream Garage restoration like my other one has. I'll show you some pictures of that. But the rear axle is an independent rear suspension with a low point single pivot, so single pivot on this side, not this side, with a transversely mounted compensating spring, and then the traditional trailing arm springs and shocks. The front is pretty standard with the dual wishbone suspension, normal springs, and normal shocks, so no air suspension or pneumatic suspension. The car does have 4-wheel disc brakes, which I do not believe that the 230 and possibly even the 250 had 4-wheel disc brakes. Okay, let's take a quick look at the 350 SL, the undercarriage and the suspension. I think I've talked a little bit about the safety and engineering that went into this car. Again, the A-pillars are solid steel, really able to hold the weight of the car, and a rollover, side impact panels in the doors, crumple zones. The gas tank was moved from the rear in the 113 above the rear axle to protect against rear impact fires. You can see that it's a fully independent rear suspension versus the single lower pivot suspension of the 113. The shocks have been moved inside the springs. The body of this car has sandwiched sheet metal to provide some of the first crumple zones in the car. The suspension in the front is fairly similar to that of the 113, so double wishbone suspension, nothing too spectacular. This car has had a light restoration a while ago, probably 10 years ago. Okay, for the 280 SL, the car has a 2.8 liter inline 6. It has mechanical direct fuel injection. So you can see this is the fuel injection block, which actually has individual lines that run to each of the cylinders. 2 valves per cylinder. The US version was rated at 168 horsepower, but the thing about the car that makes it drive differently than the SL, that makes it drive differently than the 450 is the torque. It only has 178 foot-pounds of torque.
This engine was the same engine, basically, block that was in the 230 and the 250. They bored out the block for the 250, and it eliminated the room for traditional water cooling passages, so they had to install an oil cooler on this engine. Okay, so the engine in the 350 SL, I've already mentioned it's actually a 4.5 liter V8, 2 valves per cylinder, Bosch Jetronic fuel injection, which is a much more modern version of fuel injection versus the 280 SL. It's actually, I believe, I mean, obviously the injectors are electronically controlled, but I do believe there is a computer control in this car. The horsepower on this versus the European 3.5, I believe, was over 200 horsepower, close to 220. This engine is around 190 horsepower, but it has over 200 foot-pounds of torque versus the 178 for the 280 SL, which I believe is the reason why the car feels, drives, sounds so significantly different. Okay, so we've been through the cars, we've seen them drive, we've walked around them, we've looked at the engines, we've looked at the suspensions, and from a difference perspective, obviously we've highlighted a lot of differences from a pure styling perspective, with the exception of the three-pointed star in the grille, which I would say is still different, with the exception of the hard tops, which this one has one, but it's not here, and the top mechanisms, which are similar. The cars are almost totally different. I mean, from a styling perspective, whether it's the headlight configuration, whether it's the hood opening, whether it's the windshield wipers, whether it's any part of the body styling, they are almost totally different. So from a 1 year change perspective, while this is a 69, it's virtually identical to the 71. It was a massive amount of change. And I think that amount of change and the planning that Mercedes put into it is the reason why this car was able to run for 17 years until 1989. So a lot of technology was engineered in from the start. So anyway, I don't know which one you prefer. My answer, as always, is to be I like them both. They're all both unique in a certain way. So thank you for joining me in American Dream Garage.